Hi, welcome back to Calm 110 Interpersonal Communication. This is going to be chapter two now. So, hopefully, you've already seen chapter one, and now chapter two, we're going to focus more so on just interpersonal communication. And so, in this chapter, we're going to talk about some theories, which that's one of my favorite things to talk about theories, and then also some models of communicating what works, what doesn't work, and why they differ. And so, thinking first of the purposes of interpersonal communication, I really love looking at this Maslow's hierarchy of needs because we think to ourselves when we're first born into the world, a lot of times we start screaming and we're crying, right? Because we need to be like coddled and cared for right away. We come out into the world, we're maybe wet, we're cold, and it's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? This major thing just happened. And so, thinking about the physiological needs right away, we need to make sure that we're breathing okay. And that's why, like, the nurses right away, they make sure, like, are you okay? Are you able to breathe? And then as you get older, you think to yourself, hey, I'm hungry. And so you start crying. And then hopefully your mom or your caretaker, they're there thinking, like, okay, I need to give you a bottle. I need to give you food. These are all of these needs that we have that need to be met first. I'm thinking about as we're babies, as we're infants, a lot of times we can't do these needs ourselves. So that's why we're screaming. That's why we're crying. And that's why it's so important to have that like interpersonal bond with others, our moms or our caretakers thinking, I need to care for this baby. I need to care for them. I need to give them food. I need to give them water. And so, thinking about those needs, how can we meet them, right? Now, thinking then, okay, so you have those needs met, and then you're able to get deeper relationships with other people, which I think as you get older, now you want to think about the security that you have with others, the safety, right? Thinking about your safety of your employment. Do I feel happy here? Am I worried I'm going to be fired at any moment? Thinking about the resources you have in life, thinking about your family, your health, your property. I think about all those like responsibilities, right? Once you know that you have like food on your table, then you're able to think like, can I buy a nicer table? Am I in a good environment? And then this goes deeper into your love and belonging with others. This is your friendships, your family, even sexual intimacy, romantic partners. You're able to then comfortably start those relationships, have those relationships, maintain them. Once you're in like a good, let's say you're in a good romantic relationship, right? You have food in your fridge, you have that security of feeling like, hey, I am safe here. You have employment, you have that bond with that person. Then the esteem, it's going to link into your self esteem. You're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to have confidence. You're going to have respect for others. You're going to be respected by others. And so you can see how it just all continually just grows and grows into the last one, self actualization. And that's when you're able to really be creative. You're in the best mindset possible. You're able to engage in problem solving. You have lack of prejudice and you're able to accept facts, even if you don't like them, right? We're able to be open minded with all of these. I really urge you to read this part of the chapter and think about how, interpersonally speaking, your relationship with another person, whoever that is, how this is going to help you with all of these different needs. When I look at this, I think about how communication will be about making your life better, how you're able to communicate with others, and it's just going to be better, right? I look at that top one, self actualization, and this can be hard, right? A lot of times when we can think like, how am I supposed to be creative when I'm hungry right now? How am I supposed to be able to engage in problem solving when I don't feel belonging or love within my family? Maybe my self-esteem is not the greatest right now. It's going to be hard to kind of accept the facts of something. So this is definitely a process in itself of making yourself feeling the best that you possibly can. Now, your book does bring up a great example and thinking, okay, you're in this triangle, you're trying to like deal with all of this. But let's say, and this is the example your book gives, is that you're a mother and you have a kid, and there's only enough food for your kid, right? You're able to give it to them, you want to give it to them, but you don't have any food. How are you meeting your needs, your hierarchy of needs? Now, there's a lot of questions here, and I think perfect. Once our needs are met, we're able to move on. But there's some criticism in that, we don't have to engage. And I'm going to go back for a second. We don't have to engage in all of these in order to just move up, but we got to engage with them to some degree. Now, this is also criticized as a Western centric, so like kind of like the United States, that's really only focused on individualistic cultures. Individualistic cultures means that you are only focusing on yourself. When you turn 18, your parents are like, you got to get a job and you got to move out. You got to work on yourself individually. Now, there is another term here, and I don't want to get too deep into this because this is the intercultural chapter in class, but we have collectivistic cultures, which everything we do is for the greater good, right? When I get my first degree, I think to myself, my family got this degree, not just me. When we're able to interact with others, we're able then to perceive and then make relations with them and relate it to our self concept. So, thinking about when I'm reacting or interacting with my family, I'm able to perceive how they think of me, and then I'm going to think that too. So I know I mentioned this a little bit briefly, but thinking if my parents are constantly telling me I'm smart, I am kind, I am good, my self concept is that I am smart, I am kind, I am good. You can see how when people tell you something differently, it's going to really like fog up our minds, it's going to pollute us. Self esteem, it is part of our self concept. And then it's going to get into our self worth. Am I a good person? Do I deserve these needs that are here? So it's a real mind game. Now, when we communicate with others, we're going to be able to learn about ourselves, learning about our identities, and then we're also going to be able to build relationships through these intimate, these deep connections. Social comparison, of course, for better or worse, it's going to influence our self esteem. I am a big, avid TikTok watcher. And so when I watch TikTok, a lot of times I compare myself to them. I see them do their Sunday resets, and I'm like, I should do that too. And you know what? Maybe that's a better comparison because I think I want to clean up my house. If you don't know what a Sunday reset is, it means that you clean up your house on Sundays. You get it ready for the week. You vacuum, you change your sheets, you clean the counters, all of that. Now, let's say there's a Sunday where I don't feel so great about myself. Maybe I feel lazy and I watch TikTok and I see them being so productive. It's going to impact my self esteem negatively because I'm comparing myself. Like, oh, look at them do that. And I'm not doing that. I'm not as good as them, right? So that's my social media. Huge place for social comparison, good and bad. We got to be careful with all of that, though, right? Now, we are going to get into our very first theory. Take careful note here because uncertainty reduction theory, it's also known as URT, URT. So if you're taking notes, sometimes it's easier. This is one of the oldest and most researched theory out there. You can see that Berger and Calabresi, they are the researchers that kind of coined this term back from 1975. We are still using this theory today because it is so groundbreaking, but it is also so informative in the way that we get to know people. And so, uncertainty reduction theory, it's really going to focus first off on meeting new people and kind of figuring them out cognitively and their behaviorals, like uncertainty. So, I want you to imagine with me you're on a first date. You do not know this person very well. Let's say you met online, you met like on Tinder or some dating app. And so you're sitting down, and what's one of the first things you're going to start doing on this date? Why don't you pause for a second? What's one of the first things you'll do when you're on this date? Hopefully, you pause. You're going to ask questions, right? You're going to be like, hopefully you know their name, but like, what's her name? What's your job? Are you going to school? What do you want to do with your life? Do you have any siblings? What do you like to do in your spare time? You're asking all these questions to cognitively understand what's going on in their minds. And then, as you're at dinner, the waitress comes up and she takes your order. You kind of notice how the other person treats that waitress. Are they nice to them? That's always a big test, right? Are they kind to the waitress? Are they mean to them? What's their behavior with them? Then also you kind of start noticing what's their behavior with you. Are they trying to touch your shoulder a little too much? It's a first date, calm down. And so all of these different uncertainty reduction attitudes, you're trying to understand, who is this person? Do I like this person? And what's kind of like going on here? And so we can use three different tactics. This isn't going to be really great for the first date example. So let's not think about that anymore. But your first one's going to be passive. This passive way is you're not going to ask the person anything. You avoid disrupting the individual and you just kind of want to observe them. So I always imagine to myself, let's say you're working somewhere and you have a crush on someone. You're just kind of watching them from afar. You're not talking to them. You're seeing how maybe they behave with other people. You're seeing how they talk to other people. Are they nice to them? And so that's passive. You're just watching, right? You're trying to understand who they are. Now we have active, which you might ask a friend for information. You might stalk their social media, but you're still not talking to them. So again, same example. You have a crush with someone at work. And so you might ask someone at work, hey, is so and so seeing anybody right now? You might ask your friend at work, do they like to go out? Do they go to the company happy hours? Or you can go home and you start looking at your crush's Instagram. You start seeing like, hey, what are they posting about? Be careful not to like anything, right? But you see what they're posting about. Maybe a lot of times people love to look at who people are following. And this is all deeper conversations we can get into in next couple of chapters. But active is you're checking it all out, but you're still not communicating with them. Now, the last one, interactive, interaction with the person, direct contact with them. You go up to your crush at work and you're like, hey, are you seeing anybody? You ask those questions. Now, of course, you might not be so blunt with that, like that question, but you might ask them, like, what do you like to do? And so you're able to have that directness with them. Now, of course, let's go back to our first date. You're sitting there with them, you like the way they treat the waitress. And so the best way to start getting more information out of them to see if you're a good match, the best and most common way is through self-disclosure. Maybe you're sitting there and you think to yourself, oh, I should share what my family's traditions are around the holidays. And so you start sharing that, and then you ask them, what are your family traditions? It makes them feel a little bit safe, more comfortable with sharing information with you. And then also, too, you're like exposing yourself to them with this information. And you're also going to see, how are they going to receive it? Are they just going to be like, oh, that's cool? So, anyways, the other night, and it's like, oh, they're not really caring about what I'm talking about. This is all uncertainty reduction because you're seeing their behavior, you're seeing how they're going to be cognitive with you. And the reciprocation, it's key. That's why first dates are so vulnerable. We're vulnerable because I got to share a lot about myself with you. And then I got to see what you're going to do with it, right? Are you going to respect it? Are you going to reciprocate it back? What's going to happen here? So we have elements of interpersonal communication. And these are seven main key terms that I want you to know about when it comes to interpersonal communication and the models and the theories that we talk about. And take a moment, look at my little picture here. You get a text message, they say, hey, you say, what's up? And then you say, we need to talk. And it's like, okay. And then they start texting you a breakup, right? So if you've ever been broken up through text message, I am sorry. We're going to talk about it a little bit. But the first key term here that I want to talk to you about is the sender. When we are thinking about a message that we want to send to someone, I'm the sender. So a great example right now is that I am the sender here of chapter 2 to you. I have this message and I am sending it to you. I've prepared it in my mind, thinking about what I want to talk to you about. I've prepared these slides, and so being the sender, you have to encode the message. You're going to see these key terms a lot throughout your book. And so thinking, how am I going to send this to you? Now, the receiver, you are the receiver right now of my message. You are receiving this message. You are going to kind of be listening and thinking, how am I going to interpret this? You need to obtain the message. Now, if you're watching this video, and let's say you're playing video games in the background, or maybe you're having a conversation with someone else over here, you're not really obtaining my message properly. And that's where our communication, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be competent, right? And then we get a little bit deeper now to message itself. And that's why I like to use this example of the picture, but thinking, okay, if I'm going to break up with you, I need to think about what I'm going to say to you. I can't just come up to you and say, I hate dating you. I don't want to do it ever again. We're done. So that's kind of mean, right? We have to think about the words we want to say. If you've ever wanted to ask your parents for an extension on your curfew, you have to think about the message. How are you going to come across, right? Are you going to come up and be like, hey, I'm going to this huge party and I don't want to come home till 2 a.m.? That's not the best message. But if you try to deliver it in a way where you're able to appropriately talk to them about the message, then it's good. Now we get into the channel, which deals with this picture as well. And the channel is, how are you talking to this person? How many people do you text? How many people do you talk to on the phone? And then how many people do you talk to in person? Maybe through email, through Canvas messaging. These are all different channels. And so thinking about the channel, thinking about how you're going to ask someone or talk to someone about something, that's going to make a big impact. So this picture, the channel is text messaging. Now, if you're being broken up with, some people might argue this is not a good way to be broken up with, right? It can be kind of rude. It can be mean, right? You feel bad about yourself. Or, you might think to yourself, hey, I'm going to break up with someone. I need to do it in person. I need to do it maybe in a safe environment. Maybe you got to do it in public, things like that. These channels, they matter. And because of that, the channels, why they matter, it matters because of feedback too. So the feedback of, I'm sending you this message. And so how are you going to receive it? And how are you going to give me feedback? Something I love to do in my own classes is when I'm lecturing in person and I start seeing the feedback of students like really liking the conversation we're having, conversation about breaking up. The feedback that I can see is that their response is like, maybe we should go deeper into this, right? Now, maybe not getting any feedback from a live audience like that, that's the feedback itself. They're bored, they're not into it. I gotta change the topic. And so feedback is what's gonna keep feeding into the conversation. Now we gotta think about the environment, we gotta think about where we are. For example, you're in my home right now. And so my environment, I'm thinking like, hey, I need to clean up. I need to be sure that I'm here and focused. The environment of, being in a classroom can change, right? We go into a scholarly environment and we feel good about learning. Now, on the topic of breaking up, if you've ever seen the movie Legally Blonde, she gets broken up with in the very beginning, spoiler, and she's broken up with at a very romantic restaurant. But she's confused, right? Because she actually thought she was going to get proposed to. And so the environment adds to what the message is going to be like, what the sender is trying to tell you. And so you can see in this example of Legally Blonde, it's like, wait, what happened here? thinking a little deeper now with uncertainty reduction theory. I was trying to reduce the uncertainty, but now I'm just completely lost, right? You don't break up with someone in a romantic restaurant. The last one, which we're going to talk about more in depth on the next slide, is noise. Now, noise can deal with a number of things when we're trying to receive a message. I'm going to move on. There's four different types of noise. And I want you to think about when you're talking to someone, how your attitude, your emotions, your environment, how that can all impact how you receive and how you can interpret a message. So, first off, we have physical noise. Excuse me. So physical noise is, people talking around you. This is the noise that is happening around you outside of your control. There's birds chirping, a jackhammer, a loud car. Things are going on that like you cannot stop it. Now we have psychological noise, and I like to look at this as like our emotions, right? If I'm frustrated, if I'm angry, if I'm happy about something, if I'm feeling depressed, I'm not going to really be a great communicator and I'm not really going to be able to listen appropriately. Now, our third one is semantic noise. And this one deals with we're just not understanding the message at all. Maybe the person's using jargon that I just don't know, I'm not comfortable with yet. Maybe there's accents that I haven't heard of, or just the language use itself. I don't know what you mean, right? That's noise because I hear a word and then I start thinking to myself, what are they talking about? I'm so confused. This last one is a physiological noise. And this one deals with your body. It can deal with a disability, it can be health related. I also look at this one as if I have a headache. Maybe I really need caffeine. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I'm hangry, right? And so I'm not going to be listening very well. I want you to think about this picture I have of working at a coffee shop. If you are at a coffee shop and you're working, you're on your laptop, what noises are you going to hear? Well, the physical noises is you might hear other people talking around you. You might hear like the espresso machines, right? Those can be kind of loud. You might hear the barista yelling out people's names, the door opening over and over. That could be a lot. So then the psychological noise is maybe you're happy because you like coffee, you're at a coffee shop, you're feeling good, but then it slowly starts going down because you're getting angry of how loud it is. Then maybe you hear the semantic noise of like other people talking and you're not exactly listening, but you hear some words and it's like, what's going on over there, right? And then the physiological noise of now I have a headache, right? Maybe I'm hungry, maybe I need to go buy a scone. So much is happening that makes, going back, thinking about all these elements, kind of difficult to receive a message. One of the things I want to talk to you about now is perception process. Check out this picture, it's from your textbook. And it's two people, they're looking at a number, and from each of their point of views, they see a different number. And so with perception, that's the process, of acquiring and then trying to interpret the message and then organizing it and thinking what's important here, what's happening here. So the guy in the suit, he sees a 9 and he's like, that's what I'm interpreting it. But the woman on the other side, she's like, no, I see a 6, right? But neither one of them are open-minded to thinking like, maybe I should walk over to the other side to see what you're seeing, to understand what's happening over here. So yeah, we do rely on our perceptions to understand situations, but we have to think about the importance of understanding others, right? So each time that we talk to other people, we are presenting a specific side of ourselves, and we have to think to ourselves, am I being authentic here? Are they understanding me? And am I understanding them? So the perception of a process, you got to think about these three things. First off, it's attending. I'm going to be looking at my book for this one a little bit, but for this one, we want to think, what am I going to pay attention to in the message here? Thinking about the information, what you want to focus on. I think a great example is when you're in class and the teacher's lecturing on, and then the teacher's like, this will be on the test. All of a sudden, you start attending to the message. You care about it and you're like, hey, I want to do well. And so you're attending to it. Then you start organizing that information. Your book says with organizing, you make sense of it, you define it. You're kind of like filing it away of what you need to do, what makes sense to you. And so from there, you're able to interpret it. It says here you're attaching meaning to what is going on. So when your teacher says, this will be on the test, you start listening, you're attending, you're organizing the information that they're telling you, and then you're interpreting it on your notes and you're writing down what you think you kind of make it to mean sense, right? It says here that you will attach meaning and now you're interpreting it and you're just understanding it. Now, when we think about the perception process, we got to think about other people. We had to think about what they're going through, kind of thinking about sympathy and empathy, and then thinking about how you can organize what their thoughts are, why they're thinking a certain way, and how you can be open minded. One of the last things I'm going to talk to you about are these different models of interpersonal communication. Now, we had our first theory, uncertainty reduction theory, but with models, what's cool about them is usually it's a graphic of some kind that simplifies the system of what we're trying to understand, thinking about the aspect of the real world. And when we're talking about communication, what's exactly happening. And so the scholarly world of communication, they have proposed three different models. And we're going to talk about each one of them and some different models. But the first one's going to be action models. So with action models, this is one of like the oldest models out there. And I want to be sure I get this right. This is called the linear communication model. Linear, I want you to think about just one way, right? And so let's look at our picture. And you can see the guy on the side, he is the source, right? He is the sender of a message. And so he's encoding the message, thinking, how am I going to ask this person if I can borrow their homework, right? Can I borrow your homework? That's the message. So my transmission is I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to verbally say it, let's say. And so the channel is my vocals. And so the reception is, did you understand it? And now the girl has it. She's going to decode it. She's the receiver. And then you can think about any feedback that can kind of come on the bottom of it all. Any feedback of like, hey, I want to talk to you if I can borrow your homework, but we don't focus too much about the feedback here. It is there a little bit, but this is not a big concern here. Feedback is what grows with the three. See how there's action, interactional, transactional. Feedback is going to grow gradually with each one. So this one means there's really not a lot of room for feedback. Now we do have noise, so we have to be careful with what's going on here. But with this linear communication model, great example is what I'm doing here. I am talking to you, but I'm not really leaving room for any feedback right now. That is a good example of this action model. We also have, and now this one I'm kind of interested in, it's the Berlow's SMCR model. You can see that we get into, first off, the source. What's going on here? You can think about your own communication skills. Am I good at communicating? Am I tired? Am I happy right now? Maybe what's my attitude that's going on, my knowledge on what it is we're talking about. We also have the social skills going on here and the culture. And then we get into the message, the elements, the structure. How am I actually like looking at the content here? And then we look at the channels. Remember, I told you channel could be your phone, could be TikTok, text message, a phone call, maybe even a Snapchat. And so, how are you seeing, hearing, touching it, smelling, or tasting it? I think that one's interesting because, we don't really experience that all the time, but you could, right? Lastly, we have receiver. So we gotta check out how they are the same boxes as on the source side. The receiver's skills, their attitudes, their knowledge, their systems, and their culture. So a lot goes on here with one message being sent. Now, this one's one of my favorite ones. It's the interaction models. And for this one, the Osgood Scrum model is thinking that, okay, communication is not just a one line, right? Communication is I'm going to encode a message, I'm going to send it to you, the blue part, right? You start decoding it. But at the same time, we're looking at it kind of like a circle instead of a one arrow. And this circle involves me decoding your message, interpreting it, and then also sending you a message at the same time. Can you see how feedback is really involved here now? You can think here that every time a message is sent, then the message is returned, and we are just constantly sending it back and forth to each other. I really like this. Some scholars might argue that this one's just a little bit more simple. You don't see the N noise anywhere going on here. And so there is more at depth here that we're missing. Now, this this is the big one. I know I told you the last one was one of my favorites. This one though is where it's at. And you can see what's interesting about these models is that they have grown throughout the years and it's really landed on this one, the transactional model of communication. And so you can see the two people here, we are both communicators now, not just one as a sender or receiver. We are both sending and receiving at the same time. We can think about the channels happening here. I like to look at this picture and thinking of the channels of like talking face to face and we're making eye contact. And then let's say you start telling me a story and you're not making eye contact with me, kind of breaking that channel. And then all of a sudden I start questioning, like, is this truthful? And what's going on? Are you distracted? You can see the messages are going back and forth. We have noise that's happening here. Now you will notice how feedback, that key term is really not here, but instead the messages are just being sent back and forth over and over. So it can be decoded as feedback, but both people play a serious major role here. This is the big one. I want you to know about this one when you think about the models, but I do want you to know about how they gradually increased through the scholarly field and how we just kept adding to them, right? Awesome. That is the end of chapter 2. Please be sure that you're up to date on Canvas and you know when some assignments are going to be due. They're going to be due here pretty soon. Let me know if I can support you or help you in any way, but I'll see you later. Have a good one.